Wonderful. Hello and welcome to Simon on the Sofa with Simon on the Sofa. This is I've been looking forward to that all week. This is an unexpected meeting, which is a slight change of plans because I was going to speak to Deborah, which is Simon's partner, and it just so happens that Simon's here with me today, which is marvelous because this is how it's how the synchronicities have pulled us together. And we've never. Sometimes I meet people on the sofa. I was just telling Simon that there's sometimes a conversation or a talk or something before we talk. And today, absolutely, I think maybe the first time, absolutely nothing, is there? We've never met before. No,
I just asked you your middle name in case that might help us to avoid confusion.
Exactly. Other than that, Simon's turned up on his bike, and we're going to have a lovely conversation today about a topic which I think all of you and maybe the whole world is interested in, and that's relationships. So, yeah, that's a topic that Simon is very much an explorer in. Yeah, is that
an explorer would be a good word.
Yeah,
a very good term for it, I think. Yeah.
So and I think me too. So let's see what comes up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining me. What's on your mind? Where would you like to? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Where would you like to?
I'm just thinking, is this the first two Simons on the sofa?
Definitely.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
Good. I like that.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. It may never happen again.
Possibly not. I'd like to think it would do.
Yeah. So I'm happy. And more so because when I put Simon on the sofa, people are going to think that I'm actually talking to myself, because they're going to see it. When I put it out there, it's going to be like Simon on the sofa. They're going to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, we know you're on the sofa, and then they're going to go, ah. So, yeah, where should we in terms of relationship? Let me ask you then. Where are you up with your explorations? Where are you up to with your explorations?
Well, I guess several things running in parallel, and it's difficult to know where to begin, really.
Yeah, but, totally.
I met Debbie getting on for 3.5 years ago, and I think both of us had been, if you like, singles for a long period of time. We might have had the odd sort of encounter, but we got into our mid-40s, and I guess to a certain extent we both had the same kind of view that maybe it's best to just do this thing alone, be independent, and not, I suppose, make ourselves vulnerable. Again, I think we've both been through sort of difficult times in the past. I mean, from my personal point of view, I had a relationship when I was sort of 18, 19, very young, that sort of went badly, and I just sort of thought, hey, this is it, 20 years in the wilderness, if you like. And it's only sort of later in life that I've sort of got back into thinking, well, I don't know, maybe it's safe to go back in and have another look. And to sort of cut a long story short, I met Debbie actually online, through online dating, and we met and we found that there was this sort of interesting connection from the beginning, but we both found very good reasons why nothing could really go much further than maybe a friendship, which sort of unfolded. And I think the essence of that was in the recognition that we were very different, almost opposites. So there's a sort of attraction of opposites going on there.
Yeah.
But we were friends. We were still sort of dating. We were still looking for this other person, the perfect person. And then sort of gradually, it was a process of sort of realizing that over a long period of time. I suppose this was over a couple of years. It's a sort of acceptance, I suppose, a realization that the things that we saw in the other person that were opposite to our own traits, that were sort of shocking sometimes. How could I live with this? Actually had within them the potential for sort of further exploration. So why does this person think in a totally opposite way to me? And I suppose we sort of gradually got sort of drawn together until we realised that we ought to actually sort of try and make a go of it, which we did. So that's the sort of one strand of the story. The other strand being that Debbie herself is a psychotherapist and got a particular interest in relationships and wanted to move into counselling couples. And my background is totally different, but I was at a sort of junction in life where there are all sorts of possibilities. I had nothing in particular to pursue. This was something that interested me, and so the two of us sort of come together, not only in relationship but also in terms of working together. And so we're now starting to work with couples
and helping them through their own explorations.
Indeed, and trying to draw on what we've gone through ourselves to help them. So rather than setting ourselves up as we are the great gurus of relationships, we are people. We're a couple with relationship work in progress.
Beautiful.
And exploration in progress. And if we can help other people along the way, that's great.
Yeah. So you're transparently exploring yourselves, sharing that with people coming from the backgrounds that you've got, and then listening to other people, and then letting them find their own way as well, often by just listening, and because each person has their own answers, don't they? A lot of the time, just by listening to people talk, whether it be a couple or even an individual, you can pretty much get to where their blocks are or what's holding them back from love, for example, can't you?
In some cases you can, and I think it's very interesting to work with couples who are very different from ourselves, but also some we've had encounters with a couple in particular where we could see very similar patterns to our own, and that's very difficult because in any relationship there are certain things that are going to be very hurtful, which are generally sort of based on circumstances that trigger childhood patterns that sort of re-emerge in relationship, in a romantic relationship. And it's actually very, very difficult to find the answer to some of those emotional responses that we might get triggered in ourselves. And if we then see somebody else, another couple, with the same kind of pattern, then we ask ourselves, well, what answer have we found for this situation?
Yeah.
And there isn't always a definite answer because we might have to think, well, we're sort of going through the process ourselves.
Yeah. And also each individual. This is the beautiful, a very wonderful topic for me because, funnily enough, relationship and communication was a big thing for me up until my most recent relationship, which was that I wanted to explore deep communication. I call it deep communication, and then that led to authentic communication, and then that led to transparency of feelings and so on. And that's pretty much what the sofa came out of, was that having this level of communication almost that I hadn't seen out there, and I definitely hadn't experienced in a partnership. And it was very much about, I know you mentioned earlier about vulnerability, but it was very much about the vulnerability of love and the exploration of love, and then how love shows up in a relationship. Because everybody's, a lot of the times, their main reason for, and you can tell me if you've come across this, but their main reason for finding a partner or wanting a relationship is because on many respects they want to be loved, or they think that they need love from another person, or they need the other person to complete them, or they need justification or validation, or they need identity from that other person. Would you agree with that?
I think that's very often the case, and that there are all sorts of intrinsic dangers in going that path.
Totally.
Looking for the other half, looking for the missing part of you. But on the other hand, and this is something that comes up very much in a relationship with an opposite type of person, or somebody we perceive as being opposite, because if you look at the psychology of how we're made up, then of course we've got all this suppression of selves going on. So the sort of question is, whether we are all of us whole anyway. It's just that we've lost these parts of ourselves, and in a relationship with somebody who is, we see in this other person those traits that we've apparently lost and we can't tap into anymore for ourselves, if we can see those qualities in them, but in relationship, that person can perhaps help us to get back in touch with those things, and if you like, sort of go through a process of healing.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, there are all sorts of potential motives for going into a relationship that aren't that good, maybe to sort of prop up our ego and make us feel important or something like that. There are also certain elements of those desires which are, I would say, are reasonably valid as well.
Totally.
So it depends how you treat them, and how open-minded you are, really, and how much self-insight you have to be able to look at the relationship and use it as a vehicle for yourself and for your partner. So it's a sort of mutual journey.
Yeah, and then come from that state of awareness, because what I do now very much with the relationships that I hold is that, one, we see in others what we don't see in ourselves.
Yeah.
Two is, I don't think without relationship you can actually get to know who you really are.
Yes.
And foremost is that entering into a relationship completely unconditional. So unconditionally meaning that knowing that two people are drawn together. I mean, I don't often see coincidences. I think that a person has come to you, even if that person you, like you said, despise, or there's something there that you don't like, you're only seeing the reflection of yourself. So the whole time that the partner, and this happens in friendships as well, it's not just intimate.
Oh, I agree.
Not just intimate relationships, but these people are showing you a reflection of yourself, and that's why they've come into your, your energy, if you want to call it that, your electromagnetic field, as it were, So what would you say? What would you say then? The key elements of, would you say the key elements that you've realized through your explorations about relationships, about intimate relationships? What would you say the key elements are that you share to people, or even that you and Debbie have found now, for somebody, say for example somebody embarking on a relationship?
Yes. It all comes down to communication and transparency, really, and being prepared to go to those vulnerable places to share them with somebody, and of course that's difficult because you start out as total strangers, so there's obviously has to be a process involved in gradually sort of taking the layers away, but to be honest, to be as honest as you possibly can be. I think this is quite an interesting area, because you talk to some couples and you talk about honesty and you talk about what they're prepared to share with their partner. Yeah. And inevitably there's got to be a certain level at which we all have a point where we sort of put the brakes on and say, right, if I can't really say that. I can't really say that particular judgment or observation about my partner, because they wouldn't be able to accept it. They wouldn't be able to hear it. And if I was that honest with my partner, they wouldn't talk to me again, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But that's blocking, right?
But yes. But I think it's very difficult to actually say, okay, you want deep communication, open and honest communication as far as possible. I think it's difficult to say, completely open everything up and just put it all out on the table, because I don't think there are many people who are actually prepared to take that on board, at least not straight away.
Not straight away, no. It's stages.
It is stages.
Yeah, it's been very much stages in my unfolding and in my experience. But you know what? The more that you do it, and the more that you communicate that you're doing it, this is what's been really powerful for me, is that we're communicating that we're really trying to cut away the fat and get to the muscle of who we are, what we want to experience, and how that authentic love, that real unconditional but also really empowering love, that two people can come together as a bond without the label of even marriage, or the label of boyfriend girlfriend, or the label even the label of friendship. But friendship probably has more essence for me than marriage and even partner or boyfriend girlfriend. If you could come together in a really authentic, pure way and sharing transparently that's what you're exploring, then you're starting in the foundation of something really quite magical.
I totally agree what you say about friendship there, because my view when I was sort of in the dating process, if you like, was looking to find a partner with whom I could build a really thorough friendship before anything else.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in going anywhere else until there's a solid friendship there.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. Like, I seem to remember reading the ancient Greeks valued friendship above all other forms of relationship.
Yeah.
And for me, I have difficulty with this sort of instant gratification approach that runs through a lot of particularly Western society, where your sort of first date, you're in bed, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, I just sort of recoil from that a little bit. Maybe it says something about me. But I can't sort of think of going into that kind of territory. For me, it's got to be a slow build. It's got to be something solid.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Yeah, and like you say, I know it's different for everybody, and some people will say, well, we slept with each other on the first night and we're still together after 40 years and it was the best thing in the world. I suppose, like always, there's infinite possibilities and infinite ways that a relationship can really go. I don't think either of us are going to say that you should do it our way. It's about finding your way, but I feel for me, it's very much about finding... I love what you said earlier about people not saying what they really want to say. For me, if you don't do that, you're instantly going into the relationship with a block. And if there's a block in a relationship, there's a resistance.
Yes.
And if there's a resistance, that's going to come out some way. It might come out intimately. It might come out, in your sex life. It might come out in the way that you introduce your partner to your friends. Do you know what I mean? It might come out in really just the way you conduct yourself around each other, doesn't it? So I think for me, sometimes, I'm not saying like you said, it's like to dive in there, but it is, if you're holding, or tell me what you think about this, but if you're holding back thoughts that you want to share to your partner, whatever that is, let's create, I'm sure you've got a few scenarios, let's create a scenario, I don't know, like it might be something, it's sometimes silly things, isn't it, as well? It might be something as stupid as like, the way that they, I'm thinking of things are coming up now. I'm thinking of maybe the way they are in bed, the way they wake up, the way they lay their stuff around in the rooms, the way that we conduct ourselves in our cleanliness, the way that we conduct ourselves in relation to looking after ourselves, with food or so on. The way maybe we say things, but we don't back it up with action. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
Are they some of the ones that sort of come up?
Well, these are all typical things that you think of as being in the early stages of a relationship. I can speak from personal experience. Debbie and I are opposites in terms of I'm a bit OCD. Okay, I want
good.
I want things. I want to know where everything is. Everything has a place and it goes back there. So I know where to find it. Now, so I have been in a position of trying to understand Debbie's perspective, which is tidying is wasting your life. Okay, I can accept that because I hate tidying and I hate cleaning. Yeah, honestly, I do. Yeah. But for me, it's worth it from the point of view that when I want to find something, I know where to go to find it. But these are the little things that in the early stages of relationship you think, okay, it's no big deal. But when you start living together, then as you say, you could start building up resentments. And if you don't actually come out and say, in the kindest way possible, which I would suggest be along the lines of, when I see you've left your shoes in the middle of the floor, and I sort of come home from work, it makes me feel I don't know, angry or upset or irritated in some way because my need is for order. Yeah. So you're explaining that it's your emotion, you're owning your emotion, and what your need is. And your partner might choose to ignore that, or they might say, I never knew that was the case. If I knew that was the case, I would just put them to one side. Or So if that comes up, because that's a good example, and I know it's a basic one, but that's a good example. So the shoes on the floor. So this is great in relation to acceptance and also compassion and understanding, because that's another 3 key things you need in any relationship. So the shoes on the floor, you articulate that, and then at that point the partner
then they can articulate, well, I like to be messy.
Precisely.
Right?
Yeah.
I like to be messy. And for me, you tidying up things and putting it in their place all the time just really doesn't serve me. You know, it's like, you know, I come in from work, I throw my shoes off, I sit on the sofa, I have my tea, whatever it is. I don't care about the damn shoes in the middle of the thing, for example. Yeah. Now then, would you say then that other person articulated that great? Would you then say at that point you make a decision, because everyone's got their right to free will, everyone's allowed to be exactly who they are and they're perfect as they are. Right? Yeah. So the point is, at that point, because I'm very much, I'm not about compromise, and I don't mean that like I'm definitely about allowing. I like the word allowing as opposed to compromise. I don't like the word sacrifice, because I think, well, I don't want to sacrifice who I am in order to allow you to be who you are. Then actually you're being who you are and I'm not being who I am, because I'm now sacrificing something. I like the word allowing, meaning that, well, it don't really bother me about the shoes. You know, I really don't, it doesn't. But like you say, if it is bothering you, it is making you feel agitated and so on, would you then just say, well, look, that's a great sign. You've shown me a great sign of somebody that I'm not compatible with. Or would you say, depending on your level of acceptance, I'm willing to accept the shoes and I'm going to continue to, you know, build on this relationship?
What happens for me in that situation is I have to question myself, why have I got an issue? This is about growth.
Great.
Really.
Great.
Because this is somebody else who's being how they want to be.
Yep.
Which is great.
Yep.
I'm being who I want to be, and I've got my own reaction to the world and everything around me and other people. But when I see that situation, I could get irritated. But the thing to do there, I think, is to stop and say, well, okay, why? Why have I got a reaction to it? Why don't I come in and put my shoes there as well? So whose problem is it? Yeah. Is it my problem or is it my partner's problem?
Yeah. Totally. Great question.
It's a big question.
Yeah. But it's a responsible question.
So I can go back and I can think, well, why am I tidy? I can go back, I can look back to childhood and think, well, okay, it comes from there because I was sort of told to do this and this is how it should be, and you know, and there'd be trouble otherwise. So I've complied. I've got this sort of the parental voice has been internalised, saying this is how it should be, nice and ordered and tidy. But it's not the same for everybody else. Yeah. So whose problem is this? So when you say you don't like compromise, well, that's fair enough. I think compromise is difficult. Actually, it is difficult, but it's also in compromise. It's about giving. Yep. As well. Yep. And I think in a relationship, I think compromise does play an important part personally, because it is to do with giving to your partner. Yeah. In some way, and that might be to allow your partner to carry on like that, or they might want to give to you and say, well, okay, I'll put them to the side, or whatever, or they may not. And this is the question. The interesting question is what happens in that case when one partner expresses a frustration and says, this action that I observe you doing makes me feel this way, which is not a good feeling, because my need is for something different. That is perhaps the essence of relationship. Yeah. But on loads of different levels. Yeah, because it's all about the interconnection as well, isn't it? Which is where you, like you rightfully said, grow. Also, you have the choice there at that point that if those shoes are bothering you, for example, you can go and pick them up. You can go and move them. You can put them tidy. Yeah. If then by you putting them tidy causes a problem for your partner, it's like, well, don't keep touching my shoes, for example. Then like you said, is if you always bring everything back to self. So for me, what happened to me when I had moved into this my latest relationship, I very much was thinking that everything's about self. Everything's about me first. If I love myself, I have the ability to love another. If I trust myself, I can trust another. If I respect myself, take responsibility for myself, and so on. So I brought everything back to who I was, and then entered into the relationship coming from a much more of an accepting place for myself, which, funnily enough, and if you spoke to Anna, who's my partner at the moment, I'm very accepting of her. But like you rightfully said, there's things that each of us still
do which probably irritate each other. But there's also an understanding that, like you just said, if you can actually then see, okay, what is this irritation? Why is it there for me? And what's it showing up? I mean, that changes a lot of things, doesn't it? And I'm repeating what you said purely because that's a real key point in relationship. If you can hold the mirror up, see the opposite person as the mirror, as you,
exactly,
that is you, you know, so see the person as you, rather than just pointing the finger, talking to your friends about your partner, moaning, walking around in a huff and a puff or whatever it might be, and holding these resentments and holding all this stuff on. Fundamentally, when you break it down, you're only actually disappointed with you.
Yes. Yeah, this is true. This is true.
So that's really powerful. That's really powerful for me, and that's where I've got a lot of growth, and I've got that in friends as well, where it's like these people have come into your life it's actually there's no bad in it. There's actually, I've often said, I don't know what your views on this are, but I've often said there's no good or bad, there's no right or wrong. There just is experience, and in that experience, it's actually quite, when you look at it from a different perspective, it's actually quite beautiful. The whole interchange, the interconnectedness, the exploring, it can actually become quite a beautiful, game's not the right word, but just a beautiful exploration of life, can't it? If you don't go into it judging and pointing the finger and not actually seeing what is being shown to you.
I think you've got to take a long view, and this is a personal challenge of my own, which has been to try to step back from life and try not to. I suppose what I've done previously in life is look on the dark side, if you like. I've been a bit of a pessimist.
You've been Darth Vader.
I have, and I've sort of tried to go down this route of, it's a sort of mistaken path, I suppose, of trying to look for the worst scenario, so I can't be disappointed.
Okay.
I've been there for a long time.
Was that your 20-year gap?
That was certainly a key sort of period for me, and it's almost like watching a few seconds from a film, just a short clip, and taking it out of context and looking at that and thinking that's going to give you an insight into the whole film. You know, it's not necessarily going to do that. So when you're caught up in a particular emotion, a particular stage in life that is particularly good or particularly bad, and emotionally you sort of go to that place of everything's wonderful or everything's a disaster. Yeah. You're not seeing the full picture. So it's a case of sort of trying to come back
and observe it.
Look through the other end of the binoculars, if you like, and realise that there are both sides. And either, I think it's probably thinking about life in a similar way to the way you described. You mentioned that everything's just one and whole. And I suppose you can think of it, once everything's all sort of mixed together, the sort of the perceived good side and the perceived bad side, there is just sort of one universal thing, if you like. Yeah. Or you could sort of break it down into the sort of the dark side and the light side, and see that they, in all probability, they're there in equal quantity, and therefore there's a kind of collapse, if you like. Yeah, because you have that awareness. Yeah. It's about awareness, isn't it, as well? Because we get so mixed up with the emotionals and also our, like we said at the beginning, the validations, the identity, and and I think maybe touching on here as well, which I'm sure comes up a lot for you, is the fear. Mm-hmm. Which, and again, if you look at fear, if you break fear down in a relationship, that's illusionary as well, because it's only perception. It's only your perceived fears. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. But we go into, and I mean, that may have what kept you on your, pessimistic journey there for however, for that sort of period, is very much a fear as well. Very much so. A fear of looking at yourself sometimes, because that's what you're doing. That's probably true in terms of what's at the bottom of it. That's quite insightful, actually, I would say, because you tend to think more in terms of the fears that are more on the surface, which is, I don't want to be hurt again. Yeah. I don't want to find myself getting dependent on somebody else who's then not going to be there for me. Yeah. All that kind of stuff, which is, really... It's a bit, it's the skin, it's just a little bit, it's the little makeup you've put on. Exactly. The mask, as some call it. Yeah. And also, that's funnily enough, bringing that up, is that's when you're pointing the finger and blaming everybody else, which again is a massive, the minute you're pointing the finger at anything,
you're actually, I say that you're actually limiting yourself. Yeah, that's my thing. And this I don't know, something's coming to me now. Cheating has just come to me. So I'm thinking that brings me to cheating. You're actually cheating yourself, because I've actually cheated on a lot of my partners, and it was a horrible experience, especially with my recent one before Anna, and we had a lovely relationship, lovely person, wonderful person, and we even made this initial pact to, on the deep communication level, on that level of, this was part of my process and the challenge, but it was very much we made a pact that, if we ever have feelings for another partner or somebody else, or we want to explore other avenues within the relationship, we'd just communicate that. Okay. And that was something we made in the very early stages of our relationship. And several years later, or six or so years later, it was very much the relationship was taking some growing. I'm going to call it growing. At the time, I didn't see it as growing. I thought it was very much a struggle and very hard work. And basically, I cheated on my partner. And the funny thing was that was, and I'd done it before on previous partners. And it was that point that I realised that maybe because of the connection we had, maybe because of how much I loved her, whatever, the point was at that point there, I realised not only are you cheating the other partner, the other person, but fundamentally you are limiting and cheating yourself tenfold. Just absolutely, completely cheating yourself. And that was a real, realization, revelation at that point that made me start to realize, why does anybody go into a partnership? Why does anybody have a loving partner, a friend, building that bond, to then want to just cheat on them? Now I know we could say there's a level of growth from that, and there's learning. It may be, but not necessarily, because there's a lot of men out there, and I know women as well, but there's a lot of men out there that just cheat. And I'm going to say to you, to bring back, what's come up for you on that level of cheating, because I think it's key in relationship. And I also, so many men I speak to as well, and I don't like this, so if you say this, I'm not going to be happy with your get out way, right? Is they say, it's the animal in us. It's the natural instinct. We're like lions. We have to have multiple sexual partners, and we don't want to just stay with one. We have to go and find another. And I don't buy it. So what do you feel about that?
It's a good question, actually. It's something, sometimes, when I'm trying to work out the reason for a particular way of feeling, I wonder how valid it is to sort of look back into our sort of animal instinct and try and find the answer there. And I try and think, well, how did human beings live in sort of caveman times? I mean, did they sort of pair off and stick with one partner or not? I'm tending to think, and I've got no backup for this, I have to admit, I'm no expert. Perhaps we behave rather like gorillas, and that there's a sort of dominant male who would sort of fight for that position, who would have the sort of first choice, if you like, among the females. I don't know. I've no idea. So I'm not entirely sure. And of course, there are lots of people who are in open relationship agreements with their partners, because that's what both parties want, and they accept that's how it's going to be. I think it's a very difficult path, because I'm not sure that it's hard for me to. I can't speak for anyone else, but personally, I think it's quite a hard path emotionally to do that.
Definitely,
because of the emotional ties that you have with your partner. And the thought, of this idea that somebody else is being intimate with them, but everyone's different, and they have different feelings about this. But the question is, and maybe it's a question that I could ask you, Simon, is usually if there's a committed relationship, or what has been a committed relationship, and one partner decides to have an affair, then usually it's because they feel there's something missing within their relationship.
Definitely.
So, but what is that? I mean, it's different for different people. I mean, can you identify what it was that was missing for you?
Massively, for me, I put the whole cheating down to my experience, fear. And that was fear of, and a lot of people pointed it out as actually fear of commitment, and I didn't actually buy that, because I'm totally open to having a long-term relationship. That's not actually a problem for me. What it is it's the fear of communicating your truth, which is what we started our conversation with, actually saying what you're really thinking and feeling. It's also a massive, for me it was looking at myself and what I wanted, and then actually committing to what you wanted, confronting the fear of what you want and what you want to experience, and knowing that you can actually experience that which you want. And what we often do in relationships is we do the old scenario of, they're going to get better. I do love them. They're working on their stuff, you know, and that's good, you know, and we do the whole thing where we go, it could be worse. You know, it really could be worse. You know, it's okay. You know, the sex isn't great, but it's, you know, it's okay. You know, and I have fun, and she's lovely. You know, she is lovely. She's really nice with the kids. You know, it's just all of that for me is just massive dimming your light. And I think for me it was very much about knowing that I wanted to experience something different, but didn't know how to communicate that to my ex-partner, and also knowing how great she was as well. But also knowing that there was things in her that I didn't want. Yeah, and I think, and this is the beautiful thing about relationship, it was exactly the same for her.
Yes.
It was not. This is not like it was. Oh, I was the great one in the partner. She was wonderful. She was a great partner. She was a lovely person. But at that point, it was almost like our experience had come. We had learned and grown, and it was time to move on. And I think that what people don't allow in current day relationships. And I'm not saying about the swinging thing or going off and having multiple partners. I haven't, you know, that's not something that I necessarily want to explore. But there comes a time in relationship where it's just okay to part. But sure, you know, and that's it. We've had an amazing time together. This world is infinite. There's infinite possibilities. We don't have to be, it's actually, in my mind, a condition and a program to say that you have to be with one partner and that is it. I would say that there is a point where if you have the awareness, you come in, you grow, you learn, you have a great time or not, whatever the case may be, and you part and it's fine. But there's something in the fear of parting that we don't think we're going to we might lose and not get what we've got, which is good, but actually we might get something better, but we're not sure. So actually for me, I know that's a sort of round the way answer, but I think for me would be fear of the unknown. Absolutely knowing you can experience something different, but not 100% sure, and there's just that little bit of fear that just grabs you, you know? And I think that that's what creates people to cheat on themselves, not communicate, and, you know, cause a whole heap of pain and suffering. Does that help or answer in any way?
I think so, yeah. I think you've also made quite a good point there, which is something that is important when it comes to the work Debbie and I do with couples, which is, you know, not to make the assumption that when a couple comes to you that you've got to sort of fix the situation, because, you know, the sad thing is couples will tend to come for counselling when all else has failed and they're pretty much at bursting point, you know, which is a shame in itself, and you know, we would like to encourage people to sort of come when everything seems fine, actually, when everything looks rosy and fantastic.
Yeah, I like that.
How much better could it be in terms of raising awareness as to what's going on and what isn't going on, you know, things that are just sort of okay but accepted like that. But the point I was going to make was in the work we do, I think it's very important that a couple that comes to us who are thinking in terms of splitting, that we give them the space to go through their current circumstances, the history of the relationship, what it is that they're not finding in the relationship, what are the reasons for them wanting to end it. I mean, this is particularly important where there are children involved, of course.
Of course.
And you know, explore the possibility that what they're looking for may actually be there if they can express it in the right way with the right degree of clarity and understanding without getting into some sort of conflict position. But if, having made that exploration, there really isn't anywhere to go to help those people as far as possible to find, if you like, a sort of safe way of parting.
Yeah, and parting in growth.
Yeah,
parting knowing that what we shared doesn't have to be forgotten, and you know, so much anger about parting, isn't there? You know, like, and resentment and holding on. I'm like I am now because of you and how you treated me for those 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. How dare you leave me like that? And it's like holding on to this, like, pain. It's holding on to actual fear and pain that then, I mean, I know I've seen it in a couple of friends that have had scenarios where they've had to part and so on, and it's just, when you don't come back to self and claim your true self, claim back your love of who you are, and claim back claim back your what would be the word, your integrity, claim back the fact that you're beautiful. No matter who you are, everybody watching this is beautiful. You know, everybody watching this, at our core, not on our outer shell that we all judge, but we are all beautiful. You're here having a magnificent experience. You don't need to listen to the judgments, expectations, labels and conditions that everybody are telling you, do you? And in fact, if you harness that love, that beauty, and you come from that space, you will attract. You will fall into that state of attraction, because you will be attracting that which you are. And what I think sometimes, I don't know if this comes up for you, what people don't like to admit is that you attract what you are, even if you feel that you're attracting shit. And I think that is, you know, excuse the French on the sofa, but would you agree with that, or you know, what do you feel about that? You may not agree, but
that's an interesting question about attraction. And you know, a lot of people say that you will attract whatever you're focusing your attention on, whether it's good or bad. I used to have people tell me, look, if you have this sort of negative view, and you know, what you're always talking about what you want to avoid and what you don't want, that means that you're putting out this energy that's going to pull in exactly that thing that you don't want.
There you go.
It's possible, I'm not sure. And of course, people talk about the law of attraction and manifesting good things as well.
Yeah.
I think it's true to say that, yes, you will tend to draw in what you focus your attention on. I think that's sort of logical in a way, whether it's good or bad. I try to always question stuff. So when people talk about the law of attraction, the fact that we can sort of manifest certain situations with our energy, I think, well, okay, that's an interesting idea. I'd like to be able to kind of prove it. I suppose the problem is I come from a bit of a technical background, and I want to always try and prove things with sort of science.
Yeah, your
which
science,
is
that's
dangerous,
good.
Really.
That's okay, that's good.
So part of me always wants to be more accepting and open, but on the other hand, there's another voice that comes up and says, well, why? You know, why just go down this path without questioning it? So I tend to be sort of sitting on the fence a little bit agnostic with all sorts of things. Sometimes I find that irritating, because isn't it easier just to have a faith, and in some ways, and sort of use that as a something to sort of get us through life, and something we can believe in. I think it's hard to actually be constantly questioning of everything.
Yeah, I question.
Yeah. I think it's hard. It's a hard place to be.
Yeah, it can be. You know, I think the great place to be with questioning is to come to the state, or come to the point that we actually don't know anything. I quite like that. If you can have acceptance and sit with the fact that we don't actually know anything, and be in that state of not knowing, for me that's really powerful. So even though I question a lot, and I'm still exploring and in many respects seeking, you know, an experience, I still very much when I come back to my own space and my own thing, is that I very much sit with the fact that I don't really know anything, and nor does anybody else. And we're all, even science and spiritualism, and even me and you and every single person out there is actually just exploring this experience, and trying to find the best way they can, and try to experience love in the way that they know how. That's what sort of I come up with. But I mean, I know you said that doesn't necessarily happen for you, but if we don't mind, let's look at you and Debbie, for example.
Yes.
When you met her and you come out of that time and you was online dating and so on, Had you met people prior to Debbie through the online dating? Had you gone out on other dates?
Yeah.
Right. So then when you when you met them, you obviously didn't like them in some way, or something didn't connect. Yeah. So you would have went out. So, but they showed you an image of, a visual image of what, who you may have been, or what you might have liked to experience.
Sure.
Yeah. Physically and mentally and so on. You then moved away from that, so you was getting shown something, moving away, not really feeling this not right, and then you met Debbie. Then there was a connection, and then you had a lot in common. Yeah, even though you was both opposites, you're coming to the state of realization now that you had a lot in common.
You're right there, actually, because at the beginning you focused on all the opposites, all the obvious stuff.
Yeah.
But then you find there are a load of similarities there on the surface.
And in the core, which is why you're now doing what you're doing, there's been a massive amount of synchronistic events that pulled you together, but also massive learning from your awareness.
Yeah, very much so.
Right, so would you now say that you've attracted what you are?
It's possible. It is quite possible.
At this point in time.
That could be the case.
But I'm not trying to sway you. I'm just trying to, create and I'm not trying to be right, as it were. I'm trying to see it, because it happened for me and Anna. I wrote down what I want to have in a partner.
Yes.
And I'm a big list man. I write a lot of lists. I'm very much that you have the power to attract what you are, and I very much know that in order to achieve what you want to achieve, you have to become the person you want to be in order to achieve that. So many people want the stuff before they're willing to do the work. Whereas I'm very much be, do, have, as opposed to have, do, be. So people want to have the £100,000, the mansion, the £1 million, then they will do what they need to do to be who they're going to be, this lovely person who's giving and sharing and so on. It doesn't work like that for me, just in my own understanding. It's very much be, do, have.
Yes.
Be the person it takes to achieve what you want to achieve, do what you need to do, and then, you will receive.
Yeah, that's true. Which is also interesting, a little bit sort of upside down compared with how we're conditioned by society.
Exactly. It's completely, I call it flip the pancake.
Yeah.
It's reverse psychology. So with Anna, I wrote down everything I wanted. Now, even with me and Anna, through coming into that awareness, it was like, man, it was unbelievable, Simon. I've actually attracted somebody that I've put down on this piece of paper. And I mean, the things that we have in common, it blew my mind. This happened 3 years ago. I mean, I was in pretty much for a good year, and still now I still, sort of like, how come we have so much in common in likes, similarities, experiences, things that have come up. And even at this point in where we're at the moment, it's not about us being together for the next 20 years. We're actually at that point at the moment where, in order to individually grow, then if we need to part or separate, and we have separated twice before, and every time that's happened, because we've committed to ourselves and taken responsibility, there's been massive elevation.
Yes.
And then from that elevation, we've come back together because we've realised, we have a lot in common here. And what's happened again is that again has been occurring, where in an unconditional love relationship, if me and you are partners, and you say to me through that transparency and communication, I want to go and do this, that, or the other, then from my total awareness, knowing that I'm not going to be in a state of fear of loneliness, I'm secure in my own self, I'm not going to be fearing this, Simon, go and do that. And in order for you to do that, not only do I love you for communicating that to me, I support you in every way.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do, yeah. I think that, that is a very good place to be in relationship. But I wouldn't underplay how hard it is to do that.
It's difficult.
It's really hard, isn't it? Because in a way it's a bit inhuman in a sense.
Yeah.
Because, you do have emotional ties to these people and you don't want to see them sort of disappear and all the rest of it. But to be possessive is one of the worst possible things.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And the worst, and also the worst, there's no growth in possession. There's only growth in letting go.
Yeah.
But how hard is it to let go?
It's really hard. Yeah.
And for me, that was where I'm coming at in relationship. And for people listening to this, you heard the saying, let go to receive?
Yeah.
Well, it works, but there is, like you said, there's emotional baggage or fear of loneliness or fear of separation or fear of all these fears that come up But if we agree that those fears are illusion, then they're not there anyway. So there's only beautiful love, vortex of love, joy, happiness, growth and support to actually experience.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
Hard. It's a hard journey.
Yeah. So is that something that comes up in relationships, in the talks that you've had, or even in your own relationship? If Debbie said tomorrow, she's happy to go off and do her thing, and she needs to go and explore this. How do you think you feel?
Well, it's hard.
Debbie's watching, by the way.
I know. It's undeniably hard, but I would. I hope that I could do that. I hope that we could do that for one another, because there's this other thing that you flagged up, I believe, in the communication before this interview, when you were communicating with Debbie about the matter of dependence, independence. And then you can get into all sorts of different patterns there, and obviously in a relationship, and there's a sort of codependency situation. But I believe what you're striving for is a kind of interdependence.
Yeah.
Which is really about growth through, particularly in an opposites relationship where, as we've discussed already, your partner's like a mirror, so you're covering one another's blind spots in a way, teaching one another where the growth areas are. It's a difficult situation, because I think it's very easy to get yourself into a dependent or semi-dependent position in a relationship and not necessarily be aware of it until something changes to sort of bring it to the surface. And there's nothing like a total break to really kind of challenge where you think you are in terms of your dependence versus independence in relationship. Yeah,
that's a very and that's a very true point, because no matter what, the comfort comes in from the dependency sort of seeps in, doesn't it? Even very subtly, sometimes, because it's lovely to be loved, and it's lovely to have a partner that, and it's lovely to cuddle, and it's lovely to to have that warmth of somebody around. I do feel that we limit ourselves though in what we can really experience in relationship. And I love what you said, and I'm going to bring this up, and for anybody listening, I think this is a really key point that Simon's brought up, and I will say this to everybody, and even myself now, is you don't go to somebody to talk about your relationship because it's coming to the end point and you're about to explode and break up and hate each other. I loved what you said, which is you go to, because, and I've spoken to my partner about this, relationship is everything, but we seem to want to put so much time and effort into other things. We want to learn new hobbies, we want to go out and we want to go to the cinema, and we want to do all these things, and sometimes we think that's building on the relationship, but often it's not, because sometimes I see those as distractive elements of a relationship, because a relationship is actually how we're communicating, how we are actually elevating together, and how we're actually being, in that lovely vibration of love, and how are we experiencing that, from the way that we touch, to the way that we talk, to the way that we listen, to the way that we feel, to the way that we sit. And I think that if you can nurture that before you get to breaking point or judgment and cheating or thinking that you need to have multiple partners, if you can get that, would you agree, that's the hub?
Absolutely. Again, this is quite hard to achieve, I think. And again, all these different strategies you've mentioned, we might stay in the office longer, we might go to the sports club afterwards, or all these different things. There are a lot of avoidance strategies in relationships that, anything but to be together, because what's that going to uncover, what's going to happen. So again, it's about courage to face up to challenges rather than use avoidance strategies. So that's another good point. And something we've not touched on yet, but I'm sort of feeling we might be sort of going into this territory, which is, the pressures that are on modern couples, particularly now with the changes in the workplace. Obviously, there are a lot of professional women, gender roles, traditional gender roles are now in a state of who knows what's happening, almost, in a way. What is it to be a man in the 21st century? What is it to be a woman? How does that impact on relationship? Who does what? What are the responsibilities? How is everything shared out? Because we love being in relationship, and we love this sort of sense of being and all the rest of it. But at the same time, there's bills to pay, and maybe sort of kids to bring up, and sort of food to cook, and trips to the supermarket.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away, does it?
No,
it's
totally.
all there. So all this kind of stuff is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion, and also let's not forget. Obviously there are a lot of gay couples as well, and all sorts of changes there in terms of acceptance in society.
Yeah.
Very much, more to the fore. In our line of work, we've not yet worked with any homosexual couples, but that's something we'd like to do, because again, I think it's very interesting when you've got two people of the same gender in a relationship. How do the roles work there? There's no kind of blueprint for it so much.
Yeah.
Lots of different.
There's a lot of depth there. We could do another talk on that.
We could do. Yeah.
We could do another talk just on that areas, and also we've only touched on. I mean, again, we've scratched the surface today. Relationship is the depth and the infinite possibilities of relationship are pretty endless.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Everybody that probably sits on here will teach us or bring something new to that field. For me, I think that we should not try to hold on to anything of the past in relation to relationship. I think that we should come at it very much from a aware, authentic, mindful state that we're alive now in this moment, and very much don't try to let go of dogma or belief or let go of what we think that the partner should be or shouldn't be. Do you see what I mean? And very much for me, I know I've said it a few times in this talk, but come back to self. If you really authentically are being true to who you are in the best way that you know how, then you're actually going to serve everybody else so much more beautifully. And it doesn't. I'm not saying that doesn't evolve as well. It does, because that's a constant, infinite journey, isn't it?
Sure.
As I'm being more and more authentic today with you and speaking transparently, then tomorrow we may have a conversation that takes us a bit more.
Yes.
And a bit,
That's right. Get a little bit further.
And we go a little bit further. And I suppose if you go into it with that, would you agree that if you go into it with that, that's a good. You're heading down maybe the right path.
That's the ideal approach. Yeah. I mean, there are lots of ideals in relationship, aren't there?
Yeah.
And actually trying to make it happen is a different question altogether. It is hard.
Yeah.
And that's why we all run into difficulties. It's all, as we said at the beginning, it's a journey.
It's a massive journey, and a beautiful one as well. So how are you feeling? Is there anything that comes up for you? We've sort of got a couple of minutes before we wrap up. But how do you feel? Has this been a transparent conversation for you? Is there anything you'd like to ask me, or how do you feel?
I think it's gone very well, actually. I think it's great that we approached it without a sort of discussion at the beginning. So it's just sort of found its own way. I like that. Yeah. It's been quite natural and transparent. Yes.
Yeah, and is there anything you'd like to say to anybody listening to this, or that?
Well, I don't know if I'm able to do a plug. Is that all right? Am I permitted to do a plug?
You're allowed to do a plug if you like, Simon, on the sofa.
Let me give you something anyway. This is Debbie and I have started an operation called Complete Couples.
Complete Couples, lovely.
And we've got a website up, completecouples.com, and this is a little booklet that I've produced recently, and it just gives a little bit of an insight into some of the areas of relationship that we think are most important. And what I wanted to do in particular was to just try to give a little bit of an overview of different areas like communication, attraction, all these core areas of relationship, getting in touch with one's needs and how you express needs. Just put those things quite simply into a booklet with a few little tips, and this is available free of charge. We'll post it to you.
We like free stuff on the sofa.
And you can get it from the website completecouples.com, and I'd like to give you your very own copy, Simon, just in case it might be of use to you at any point.
It will be of use to me. Did you bring this for me, really?
Especially for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's off the press, just come out last week.
Right, so there you go. And you know what I love even more is that it's free.
Free,
because the sofa's all about it's all about just this talk's been really magical because the sofa is about empowerment. It's just about people sharing openly in order to really put out a vibration of self-empowerment. And there are ways, isn't there? I mean, there's many ways that we can live a more truthful, fruitful life. And I mean, even like you say, going to the website completecouples.com and just reading this free manual, if you're having struggles with your relationship, that could be you know, the step that you need, you know, just to get you moving.
It's to introduce the topics, get people thinking about what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some new things in there that they haven't come across before. If they want to take it further, obviously, we'll be very happy to help in those areas.
And I'll put some links at the bottom of the page,
That's
which
terrific,
I normally
thank you.
build. So, okay, thank you so much. Give us a
Thank
hug.
you, Simon.
It's
Yeah.
all about hugs
Hey.
on the sofa.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
it's been really good.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, as always, for joining us. As I said before, this relationship topic is vast, it's infinite, and we could talk about it all day. But if we're talking about peace on earth, if we're talking about harmony, if we're talking about loving our neighbour, then it all starts with self, and it starts with if you can come and find peace within yourself first, and then we can look out to the world that we're co-creating and we can create peace on earth. But you know, you've got to look at yourself first. Like we said, hold the mirror up and delve within.
Right.
Thank you very much for joining us. This has definitely been a Simon on the Sofa. Take care.